All right, welcome everybody to the second virtual lecture this semester. Today we have Abe Flanigan. He's going to be talking about digital distractions on learning outcomes. Abe is a PhD student in educational psychology at the University of Nebraska. He's recently published an article on learning individual differences. It's on research and social media on the effect on college students. He says he is a grad student with no free time. So use his time wisely, ask questions, and I'll turn it over to Abe. Thanks, Abe.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate it. And yeah, like Adam said, I'm a PhD student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And one of the big things about being a grad student is you have to do a lot of research. And I was kind of struggling to figure out what I wanted my research to focus on. And because research takes up 22 out of the 24 hours that I have in a day, you want to find something that you're interested in. Otherwise, you're just going to hate your life as a grad student. And I figured that since I spend most of my time on my phone anyways, I might as well research how digital devices, how being on my phone as I try to do homework, study, attend class, or give a presentation, how that impacts student learning outcomes. And I first noticed that this would be an area that might be fruitful for research during the class that I teach here at UNL. Part of my graduate assistantship, I teach an introductory level ed psych class here at UNL. And in that class, one of the things that we talk about are the study strategies that people use, their motivations for going to school and doing well in class, and also kind of talk about different problems that people are facing and figure out how to overcome those problems. And one of the problems that a lot of the students kept bringing up was the distraction caused by things like social media or their phone constantly going off. It looks like there's about a dozen or so people in the audience right now, and I'm pretty certain that if you have a cell phone and you're in the audience today, you have that cell phone within arm's reach, and you'll probably be tempted to look at it over the course of the next hour or so. My phone's right here. I'm probably going to be tempted to glance at mine at some point. Right? So it's normal and it happens, and part of my research was to figure out why that's normal and why that happens. Right? And so today for the presentation, I'm just going to overview some research that's been done in this area, talk to you about a specific study that I did related to the impact that frequent social media use has on students' academic experiences in and out of the classroom, and then I'll talk about some implications for it. So it's not going to be anything over the top. It's going to be mostly conversational, so if anybody has any questions or things you'd like to add at any point, definitely feel free just to blurt it out. Obviously, I think Adam said he'd have to unmute you, but definitely don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have something you'd like to add. All right, and so now I'm going to click over to the PowerPoint, so I will disappear. All right, Adam, so if anything goes wrong with this PowerPoint while I'm going, and if it doesn't seem like I realize it, don't hesitate to jump in and let me know.
Will do.
All right, cool. All right, so the title of the presentation is "It's Like a Toilet Bowl of Distractions, Exploring How Mobile Technology Impacts Student Experiences." And as you'll see later on, the toilet bowl of distractions was a quote that was given by a student that we interviewed about his experiences with social media. And he describes social media use while he's doing homework as a toilet bowl of distractions. He'll reach for his phone just to check Twitter. Next thing he knows, he's scrolling down. He's clicked on a link. Now he's looking at YouTube. And so he just described how it's a toilet bowl of distractions that once you fall in, it can be really difficult to crawl back out. Like I said, we're going to talk about the problem of social media and digital distraction, review some literature, talk about a study I did, and then look at some implications and then give everybody time for questions or to share their thoughts. All right, and so the statement of the problem, basically a growing body of literature says that the presence and the temptation to use digital devices like cell phones, iPads, laptops, smartwatches, basically anything electronic that we own nowadays is connected to the internet, which gives us access to instant communication with other people, instant access to news and information, things that when our parents were going to college didn't have at the palms of their hands. When my parents were in school, the biggest problem was trying to overcome the temptation to read the newspaper if you got bored in class. Now we have access to so many different things that it's becoming a problem for students to self-regulate their learning in the face of those distractions, which self-regulate means basically to find ways to stay on task and get an assignment or studying or to pay attention during a lecture, how to get those things done. So the growing popularity or presence of digital devices and social media in our lives has led to the creation of TV shows, instant celebrities, people watching the same YouTube video over and over and over again. And so there's been some studies that I've kind of just given little sample titles here of news articles or studies that have come out with titles related to the impact that digital device use has on student outcomes. So there have been studies that have shown that cell phone lowers student achievement, Facebook use detracts from homework time. Actually, basically, the literature that I look at basically looks at Facebook as public enemy #1. Most of the social media that people use, Facebook is the #1 most accessed, to spend our most time on it. But now things like Vine and Snapchat are gaining in popularity as well. And so basically, I'm not the only one who's noticed this. The popular media has noticed it, other researchers, you've probably noticed it yourself. If any of you were to reflect on your recent studying experiences, like when you're in the library, in your dorm room, wherever it is that you've studied or worked on homework, you probably felt this temptation or this distraction, especially when all of our tasks, like you write in a paper or you have to find information online, then literally, social media, sports scores, online shopping, news, all of those things are literally just a click away. And so the more time you spend on that, if you only have 2 hours in a given night to dedicate to studying, and you spend an hour or 45 minutes clicking back and forth or doing something else, then obviously that's going to detract from your success and your ability to get homework done, the quality of your studying experiences, and whatever else you might be working on. And this rise in digital technology and social media has also made people famous. It's become a really socially ingrained element of who we are as a society, and how we connect with those around us. And so it's given people like Justin Bieber fame or infamy, however you want to look at it. It's made Mark Zuckerberg one of the richest people on the planet. It's made Chris P. Bacon here an internet sensation, the same with Grumpy Cat, and it let Carly Rae Jepsen become a one-hit wonder. Right? So not only is it just not only is our digital devices or social media things that we do by ourselves, but it's also just spread into this global phenomenon that has really impacted our society as a whole. Technology, I don't think anybody would argue, has changed society for the better and sometimes for the worse. And so to continue beating the dead horse here, my purpose of my research is basically to explore the impact that digital distraction or digital device use has on student academic experiences in and out of the classroom. All right. And so just to give you an example, and as I've said already, social media is one distraction that I'm interested in because our academic experiences are embedded in the digital age that we live in. So outside of the classroom, we're all used to being able to grab our phone or open up a tab on our laptop and instantly connect with other people or get information about the world around us. That tendency, by and large, doesn't just automatically disappear once we get into the classroom. It's not like you walk into the classroom and it's this magical place where all of a sudden you're not interested in what your friends are up to, what's going on Twitter, what's going on in the world. All of those things are things that you're going to continue to be interested in and wonder about and be distracted by while you're in class. Now, obviously, we would hope, for myself as an educator, that won't always be the case, and a large part of my research going forward is going to be to figure out how to make digital devices and social media tools for learning. But just to kind of give you a quick idea of the impact that social media is having on all of us, Adam, will you play the social media video that I sent to you?
Sure can.
You're a good man.
What is the internet doing to our brains?
Yep. Do I need to click over or anything while you're doing this? No, it's 5 things that social media is
Changing your brain?
5 crazy ways social media is changing your brain. Yeah.
All right. No, you're not on the screen. The video is, so.
Okay, cool.
Social media sites being used by 1/3 of the entire world, they clearly had a major influence on society. But what about our bodies? Here are 5 crazy ways that social media and the internet are affecting your brain right now. Can't log off? Surprisingly, 5 to 10% of internet users are actually unable to control how much time they spend online. Though it's a psychological addiction as opposed to a substance addiction, brain scans of these people actually show a similar impairment of regions that those with drug dependence have. Specifically, there's a clear degradation of white matter in the regions that control emotional processing, attention, and decision-making. Because social media provides immediate rewards with very little effort required, your brain begins to rewire itself, making you desire these stimulations. And you begin to crave more of this neurological excitement after each interaction. Sounds a little like a drug, right? We also see a shift when looking at multitasking. You might think that those who use social media or constantly switch between work and websites are better at multitasking, but studies have found that when comparing heavy media users to others, they perform much worse during task switching tests. Increased multitasking online reduces your brain's ability to filter out interferences and can even make it harder for your brain to commit information to memory. Like when your phone buzzes in the middle of productive work. Or wait, did it even buzz? Phantom vibration syndrome is a relatively new psychological phenomenon where you think you felt your phone go off, but it didn't. In one study, 89% of test subjects said they experienced this at least once every 2 weeks. It would seem that our brains now perceive an itch as an actual vibration from our phone. As crazy as it seems, technology has begun to rewire our nervous system, and our brains are being triggered in a way they never have before in history. Social media also triggers the release of dopamine, the feel-good chemical. Using MRI scans, scientists found that the reward centers in people's brains are much more active when they're talking about their own views as opposed to listening to others. Not so surprising, we all love talking about ourselves, right? But it turns out that while 30 to 40% of face-to-face conversations involve communicating our own experiences, around 80% of social media communication is self-involved. The same part of your brain related to orgasm, motivation, and love are stimulated by your social media use, and even more so when you know you have an audience. Our body is physiologically rewarding us for talking about ourselves online, but it's not all so self-involved. In fact, studies on relationships have found that partners tend to like each other more if they meet for the first time online rather than with a face-to-face interaction. Whether it's because people are more anonymous or perhaps more clear about their future goals, there's a statistical increase in successful partnerships that started online. So while the internet has changed our verbal communication with increased physical separation, perhaps the ones that matter the most end up even closer. Speaking of social media, we had you ask us questions on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Google+, and every other social platform we could find, and did a Q&A video over on ASAP Thought. So if you feel like getting some insider info on ASAP Science and behind the scenes, check it out with the link in the description. Got a any question you want answered? Ask it in the comments on Facebook and Twitter. We also finally got a P.O. box for all of you amazing science lovers who have requested to send us mail or other stuff over the years. And we'd love to hear from all of you. So
Okay. And so the reason why I chose that video is that's kind of crazy. They say that we can become addicted to social media just like a drug, that we experience some sort of a phantom vibration on our legs where we're so used to the phones going off in our pockets. And so the reason why I chose that video is because it really does a good job of highlighting just how social media, but also digital distraction, has kind of permeated the life that we live. There's other studies that have shown that, this video said that we're basically addicted to social media. Other studies have shown that when people are separated from their cell phone for any period of time, that they become distressed, depressed, anxious, all sorts of just negative emotions. There's a commercial that's going on around TV right now. I think it's like a Chevy truck commercial. And they take these people's cell phones and then just make them think that they destroyed them. And then they ask them how that made them feel. And one lady in the commercial said that it just made her feel awful. So I'm going to go forward, and we're going to talk about some research related to digital devices, so not just social media, but also just like cell phones, laptops, and the things that people use those devices for, like texting, social media, sharing information, looking at the news, whatever it might be. All right, so we're going to look at the access that college students have to digital devices, how often they use them, and then the impact that these devices have on our academic experiences. All right, so first, the availability of digital devices. Basically, most college students own a cell phone. The statistic on the slide says approximately 90% of students own phones, but that's from a study that was done in 2007. And I've seen studies more recently that have said upwards more than 95% of college students own cell phones. And there's a difference between your basic cell phone, which maybe texting would be the most fancy thing you can do besides make a call, and a smartphone that can access the internet. But I've seen studies that have shown that well more than 50% of college students own a smartphone, and basically usually the statistic is almost near even. By and large, if college age students have cell phones, typically they're going to be smartphones. And then studies have shown that more than 80% of college students own laptops, and there's even a bunch of colleges that just give laptops to their students for free and encourage them to use them. I did my undergrad at Northwest Missouri State University down in Maryville, Missouri, and they like to call themselves the digital campus or the wireless campus or whatever it was. And the initiative was to make it so that every college student could have a laptop. They encouraged students to bring those laptops to class. And while I was sitting in those classes, obviously I'm a graduate student, so I take school super seriously, probably more serious than I should. And I noticed that people around me were using the laptop that the school provided them and that they encouraged them to use in class, but people were using them for basically anything other than taking notes of what they were supposed to be using it for in class. And the studies have shown that while 90% of students own cell phones, just about all of us bring our cell phone with us to class. If you own a phone, odds are you're going to bring it with you. You're not just going to leave it in your dorm or in your car. And greater than 25% of students bring laptops to class. And as we'll see, the presence of cell phones and laptops in class has been associated with a whole host of negative outcomes. And finally on this slide, studies have shown that not only do we bring our digital devices with us into class, but we keep them close by as we study or do homework. Studies have shown that students check their phone at least once every 6 minutes, at least once every 10 minutes, or several times an hour, which obviously leads to constant distraction, constantly getting pulled on task, which minimizes the quality of our study sessions. You know, if you're constantly switching back and forth in between reading a book and scrolling through Twitter, once you're done scrolling through Twitter, you have to think to yourself, okay, where was I? What was I reading about? Get yourself back into that mindset and then start reading again. So it impacts not only just staying on task to get a math assignment done, but also our ability to actually study effectively. And so here's some more interesting statistics about college students' use of digital devices. One study found, actually a bunch of studies have found, that many college students spend more time texting each week than studying, which makes sense if you realize that by and large, most of us spend 3, 4, 5 hours a day on our phone or on our laptop. So the fact that some of us spend more time texting each week than studying, that seems like a crazy statistic, and it is. It's definitely a problem if you're concerned with academic success. But
I'm sorry. Yeah. How is that texting, like SMS or any kind of instant messaging, emailing?
Can you say that one more time, Adam?
Is that just strictly like SMS texting, or is it emailing, Facebook messaging?
This study that I looked at, this Hansen et al. 2011, there's this study related to just sending more texts each week than studying is just like text messages and picture messages, so things through the cell phone.
Okay.
But if you couple that with like Snapchatting or emailing, then obviously the number is going to be way higher. Their point here was just this one activity, just texting, occupied more time than most people dedicate to studying. But when you take also into account the amount of time that people spend on Facebook, on Twitter, plus sending text messages on their phone, plus sending picture messages, plus sending Snapchats, anything else, then obviously the amount of time we spend total on our digital devices just dwarfs the amount of time that people spend studying each week. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Cool. All right, and then the second bullet point says that evidence suggests that college students switch back and forth between homework and studying and digital device approximately once every 6 minutes, once every 10 minutes. The number differs basically depending on which study you read. But the takeaway message is that we switch back and forth, or we multitask a whole heck of a lot. And studies have shown that when people attempt to multitask, their performance on their primary task, which in this instance would be homework and studying, as I've said already, goes down. And college students spend 3 or more hours on their phone in a given day. And so related back to the first bullet point, that most college students don't spend 3 hours a day studying. But if we spend 3 hours a day with combined texting, social media, and all of those things, then you can see that our use of digital devices really dwarfs the amount of time that we dedicate each week to our academics. And obviously that's a big problem, because if you're distracted, then you're not getting your work done. And so that's why I said earlier that a big part of my research going forward is going to be to figure out how to take these devices or these distractions and turn them into tools for success. There's some studies that have been done where instructors have tried to incorporate like Twitter or something into their classes, or there's applications you can download on a phone that takes place of those clickers, those in-class like polling tools. So that research is already done, but the problem is that most instructors don't embrace it, because there's a pretty big divide in between the millennial generation and people who have, and the people who are primary professors who have been, who are 50, 60 years old, and the technology boom took place, and for lack of a better phrase right now, kind of left them behind, or left them playing catch up. And then, but this fourth bullet point is what I find kind of interesting, and it's definitely something that I've seen in my research, is that several studies have found that college students report a generally negative attitude about the impact that digital device use has on our academic experiences. So we know it's a problem. We know we're addicted. We know we use it all the time. We know that we try to multitask, but we still do it anyway. And so when people are asked to reflect on their opinion of digital devices, it's usually pretty negative. It extends the amount of homework that I have every night by an hour, or makes it difficult to type a paper because I'm always looking at Facebook. So our perceptions, we're aware of this impact, but due to just the addictive and really just the habitual nature of using digital devices, people basically can't put them down. And so going forward, figuring out ways to help students regulate their digital device use and how to make them into tools for success are definitely paths that myself and other people interested in this topic are going to take. And then finally, the impact of distractions. Using digital devices while studying, attending a lecture, or doing homework have been associated with a whole host of things: decreased homework completion and performance, doing worse on in-class tests, quizzes, getting lower class grades, getting lower GPAs. Basically, and this all makes common sense, really. If you're in class, you're not paying attention, you're going to miss instruction, you're going to miss information, and you're going to do worse as a result. You're not going to get a question on a quiz right if you never learn the answer. And so basically, that's the biggest impact that mobile devices and distractions have. And so there's another video here where it's titled "What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains." And it's pretty similar to the social media video I showed earlier, but this also just does a better job of showing why the constant presence of distractions creates cognitive problems for us. So Adam, you can play that video now.
Alrighty.
So you're reading an article online when you get an instant message with a link to a funny photo, which of course you have to share. And now you're reading your Facebook news wall, which sends you to a video of a panda bear attacking a kid. And now you're reading Wikipedia to learn everything you can about the violent behavior of panda bears. And this is what 3 minutes on the internet can be like.
We live like this all the time, and it has to have some kind of effect on us.
The net is making us more superficial as thinkers.
That is Nicholas Carr. He is the author of The Shallow, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brain. To understand this whole thing better, we need to go way back in time, say like the prehistoric age.
You wanted to know everything going on around you, because the more you knew about your surroundings, the less likely you were to get attacked by a predator. And there's even evidence that our brains release some dopamine, pleasure-producing neurotransmitter chemical, to reward us for seeking out or finding new information.
So getting distracted felt good and helped us stay alive. But the problem is that nowadays, predators aren't much of an issue, but we still have the same brains. And also, there's the internet, which is...
It's an incredibly information-rich environment that the net creates for us, and that's why we use it so much. I mean, sounds, pictures, words, text. And what this tends to do is promote a sort of compulsive behavior in which we're constantly checking our smartphone, constantly glancing at our email inbox. We're kind of living in this perpetual state of distraction and interruption,
which is dangerous because
that mode of thinking crowds out the more contemplative, calmer modes of thinking.
And that focused, calm thinking is actually how we learn. It's a process called memory consolidation.
And that means the transfer of information from our short-term working memory to our long-term memory. And it's through moving information from your working memory to your long-term memory that you create connections between that information and everything else you know.
So you've got this awesome life-changing piece of information in your short-term memory, but then you hear that email ding, and there it goes. That email takes its place, and you never get a chance to learn anything, all because of one distraction.
So attention is the key. And if we lose control of our attention or are constantly dividing our attention, then we don't really enjoy that consolidation process.
But I can hear it now. Someone out there is saying, what does learning matter if all the information in the world is just a Google search away? Well,
that is kind of shortchanging our intellects. If that's the way you're using your mind, just kind of searching very quickly and finding information and then forgetting it very quickly, you're never building knowledge. You're kind of thinking like a computer.
Which means that our very humanity is at stake. And it would be a shame if we all got assimilated because, well, humanity is pretty neat.
I really believe that if you look at the great monuments of culture, they come from people who are able to pay attention, who control their mind. That's what allows us to think in the highest terms, think conceptually, think critically, think in some very creative ways.
And it's this kind of thinking that's at risk, being eroded one cute cat video at a time. Don't get us wrong, the internet is good for lots of things, and it should be celebrated. But the best thing we can do for our minds is to find some time every day to unplug, calm down, and focus on one thing at a time. Your email and those cats will be here when you get back.
All right, Abe.
All right. So now I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to see if hopefully get some of you in the audience to talk to me. So what are some of your thoughts about the videos that I've shown so far, or things that I've said? Do you agree or disagree with some of the statistics that I've given? Do your experiences align with a lot of the stuff that I've talked about? Do you think this isn't a problem that I'm just wasting my life away? Like, what are your thoughts? All right, how about raise your hand if your cell phone or your laptop or social media are a constant distraction while you're studying or doing homework? All right. I think I saw somebody in the middle was going to put her hand up before I started talking. Were you going to say something? Yeah, I saw you.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
I can't understand you, so Adam, you'll probably have to.
I'll translate.
Okay. What I'm gonna try to ask is when I'm studying, I try to do like 45 minutes of like hard studying, but don't have like my phone with me. And then like 10 minutes, I'm like using my phone. Is that like a bad strategy? To like go. Like,
To alternate?
Yeah. Like he in that video it said something about alternating, but I feel like it's not
Okay. The question is, she spends about 45 minutes without her phone on her when she's studying. And then she'll spend 10 minutes just using her phone and then go back to studying for 45. Do you think that's a good strategy?
I also heard you say something about the video, and I don't think that the people who made that video would agree with what I'm about to say, but there's not really a principle, but a lot of people who adhere to, a lot of people in educational psychology, there's research that has shown that people's attention span, because the brain is a muscle, is only good for about 45 minutes to an hour, so it'll vary for you or for me or for anybody else. And basically, I would say that that's a good strategy, because after about 45 minutes or so, you've probably, maybe, I mean, I don't know, odds are that you are within the range of where your attention span, and when our attention span starts to dwindle, that's because our motivation is also starting to dwindle. You know, you're tired of reading, for example. And so giving yourself like a 5-minute break to kind of clear the mechanism, so to speak, and check Facebook or texting to give yourself a mental break, I would argue is a good strategy. When I teach my classes, sometimes you have 50-minute classes, and other times you have classes that run like an hour and 15 minutes. When I teach classes that run an hour and 15 minutes, after about 55 minutes, I give everybody a break, and then they have 5 minutes to look at their phone, pull up their laptop, and just kind of glance through stuff. And then after that, they put it away, and then we finish up with what we were going to do that day. So I try to do most of the primary instruction in the first 50 minutes when their attention span and their motivation is still high, and then give them a break, and then basically just kind of close things down. So I would give your study strategy my full endorsement. So long as your break only lasted like 5 or 10 minutes, and that you didn't study for 45 minutes, check your phone for an hour, and then leave the library feeling all good about yourself. Good question. Anything else?
Yeah.
All right.
That email thing, where you're constantly, like, we as college students and like college athletes, you're always using email to get a hold of your coaches, your teachers, and everything. So is it a good idea to have that access on you at all times?
Did you hear that, or you want me to repeat it?
No, yeah, I'll need you to translate.
Okay. You know, especially college athletes speaking, says they need to have, you know, they have access to their emails whenever coaches and stuff need to send out information. Is that a good idea to have that always at the ready?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that having it at the ready isn't necessarily a problem so much as if you're able to self-regulate your use of it. You know, so I'm guessing you get emails through your phone, maybe. And so if you do get emails through your phone and you're constantly looking at your phone every 5 or 10 minutes, then that becomes a problem. You know, but if you train yourself to keep your phone in your bag, then you're going to minimize that distraction. So I don't think that having it at the ready is necessarily the issue, because we're a digital society. And so the problem isn't, my research almost looks at it like we're always going to have these things near us. And so I wouldn't advocate just leaving your phone back in the dorm, but it's finding ways to train yourself, and really for instructors to teach students about the pitfalls of distraction, and then practice self-regulation so that it doesn't become a problem. So no, I wouldn't say it would be an issue to have the phone. It would just be, you know, finding ways to regulate your use of it so that it doesn't constantly get in your way.
Did I ask your question correctly? Okay. If I don't, somebody just tell me, no, that's not what I was asking.
Cool. All right, well then I will move on to and describe to all of you a study that I did within the past year related specifically to students' use of social media. It's a study that was recently accepted for publication, which is a big deal. That means hopefully I'll be able to get a job when I'm done in school. And I'm going to share with you what we did, why we did it, some findings. And normally when I tell people about this study, it's something that they can relate to pretty closely. And then after I do that, we'll have some more time for questions and anything else of that sort. So Adam, can you guys see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, we can.
All right, cool. So the study that I'm about to tell you about was called Social Media as Academic Quicksand, Exploring Student Experiences in and Out of the Classroom. And this was all based on my experiences with my students. I try to run a pretty laid-back, informal atmosphere when I teach, which the benefit of that is that my students will open up to me and share with me if I have questions about these kinds of things. And one thing that my students over the past 3 years that I've been teaching is that social media specifically is a huge problem, and social media, as we'll see, encompasses texting and Facebook and everything else that we would assume. And they basically talked about how whether they're in a lecture or doing stuff outside of class, the temptation to use social media is constant. And so me and a professor here at UNL wanted to explore this to learn more about students' experiences with social media and get their perceptions about how big of a problem it really is. All right, and so our central research question was, how do college students describe their experiences with social media as they complete academic tasks in and out of a classroom setting? So we did interviews with a bunch of undergraduates here at UNL, and all of the data that we gathered are quotations from the interviews. So there's not any complex statistics or anything like that involved in this study. It's just purely the words of the participants themselves are what drove this study and the results. Right. So their responses were broken into their experiences with social media in the classroom and out of the classroom. So first, I'm going to share with you the definition that our participants created of what social media means to them. And then we'll talk about their out-of-class experiences and then their in-class experiences. All right, and so we asked all of our participants to provide their own personal definition of what social media is. And then we basically just combined all of those definitions into one clean, easy to understand definition. And to them, social media consists of electronic, often web-based platforms, Facebook, Twitter, sending text messages, that allow users to connect to a wide audience, such as family, friends, and also complete strangers, like celebrities and their Twitter followers, in order to share information, ideas, and life updates. So information and ideas are things like picture messages, messages with text in them, really anything. And then we put life updates in there because of the whole Facebook depression, that people tend to emphasize their life updates and their accomplishments and really downplay anything else, so that way that you look good on social media. And so this definition of social media is what drove what we based all of their responses on. All right. So first we'll look at students' experiences with social media as they do homework or study. And we organized them into themes. And so the first theme of their responses was that social media is constantly available. So as you can see, the bullet point, Marissa here says that it's always with me. I either study on my laptop or my laptop is involved in some way. And just as with my cell phone is always going to be on me, the opportunity to check it is there. And another participant, Flo, said it's always right at her fingertips. And so basically social media, as I said earlier, once you enter the classroom, your temptation to look at text messages or Facebook statuses or look at Snapchats, none of that magically goes away. Well, the problem's even worse when we're outside of, when we're doing homework or studying and we don't have a professor there to keep us in line. The second theme was that college students frequently use social media as they did homework or studied. It ranged anywhere from 25% of the time to basically the whole time while you study. Marissa here, who I think is the one on the first slide that said it's always with her, when she talked about the frequency of her social media, she said that it adds 3 hours in a whole night of just doing homework. So if she had homework that would take her 2 hours to do, with her use of social media, it ups it to it takes her 5 hours a night to get homework done, which is crazy. And I hope she was exaggerating. But other people had more reasonable use. Woody said that he'll check Facebook at least 10 minutes for every hour that he studies. Dennis said that it occupies about 25% of his whole time. And Chip said that check it at least 5 or 6 times in an hour. So it's constantly available, and we are constantly using it during homework and study. And then the nature of how social media infiltrates, for lack of a better word, the homework and studying experiences. Basically, a lot of the time we start using it and don't even mean to. So Kaylee said that she'll mean to go to Google to do a search, and she ends up typing in Facebook. Or other students described how they'll pause because they're getting frustrated or trying to think of an answer, and then just out of habit, reach for the cell phone, start scrolling through Twitter. Next thing you know, 20 minutes have passed, and they don't have anything done. So it doesn't always need to be a conscious decision to use social media. Sometimes it can just be unconscious, and then all of a sudden you realize that you are, 3 deep into a Snapchat feed, and you have no idea how the heck you got there. And another theme that emerged was that there's multiple factors that influence social media use. Deadlines. If you're working on something that isn't due in the near future, it's easier to have less motivation and to get off task. Interest and importance. If you're working on something that you're not interested in or you don't see the relevance in, then it's easier to get off task. Things like the gen ed classes that maybe you don't want to take, but you have to for your major. Students described how if they're doing homework for one of those classes, easier to get distracted. And then also computer-based homework and study. If it's on the laptop, it's just a click away. And it's a lot easier to do if you're reading something that's online. And so there's other factors that I'm sure if I were to ask the audience, there's probably other factors that influence your social media use. Boredom, definitely one of them. If you're just tired of reading, or if you think it's time to take a break. Like the girl who said she texted after 50 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, let me know if you're going to get to this. As an undergraduate, social media was just getting started. I think Facebook had just come out when I was an undergraduate. So it wasn't really a big thing. Yet, I still found plenty of ways not to do my homework. How is social media impacting that any differently than, I used to read a book or play a video game instead, anything instead of doing my homework. How has this changed because of social media?
It's changed because of social media in that when I talked earlier, I said that at the core of all of this, it's just that you're finding a way to get distracted. And so in that regard, this is no different than deciding to go play a video game or reading a newspaper or having a friend stop by your dorm and you just decide to start hanging out with them instead. So in that regard, this research doesn't contribute anything new. What it does contribute, and what my study that I'm going to look at in the future, is that social media represents a kind of a socially ingrained phenomenon. So most people, when they're sitting in class, there's exceptions to everything, weren't, before social media grew in popularity, weren't sitting there thinking, oh, I have to go back and play this video game, or I have to go read this magazine article, or I have to go do a crossword puzzle, or I have to do this. But the nature of social media is such that it's so socially ingrained that people feel lost or disconnected if we aren't constantly checking Facebook or Twitter or cell phones. And so what I think the easiest way to combat against off-task social media use is to get at the heart of it and to help students realize that social media doesn't have to be this huge part of our life, who we are, that if we can disconnect from social media, then it's going to be easier to stay on task. There's still going to be other things that distract us. That's always going to be the case. But like that internet video that we just watched showed, social media only increases the problem. There's more things competing for our attention. There's more information coming in. There's more people trying to get a hold of us. So social media really just represents one specific kind of distraction. I'm interested in it because of that socially ingrained aspect of it. And my hope is that by understanding that more, we're going to be able to learn how to teach students to effectively self-regulate their use of social media.
Okay.
So yeah, that's honestly a really good question, because in that regard, there's nothing new here. If you're distracted, no matter what it is, it's going to pull you off task and you're going to do worse. I'm just super interested in social media because of kind of how it changes society and the impact that it's only going to grow. So the things that I'm talking about right now, people weren't even thinking about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because of the nature of social media has changed over time. So imagine a decade from now, what we're going to be talking about, what social media is going to look like, what digital devices are going to look like. Most of us can't even imagine. So that's really why I'm interested in it, because it's kind of this societal issue that I think we're going to continue to see only advance and change, and we're going to have to continue to adapt to it in order to understand it and to overcome it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then perceived impact that social media use has on homework and studying quality. These are kind of interesting. Students didn't really perceive an impact on their homework quality. They knew that it would extend the amount of time that it took to do homework, but didn't impact the quality. So Kaylee said, the quality, not so much. I'll spend the extra 2 hours if I have to. And then Marissa said, for homework and assignments, I don't think it lowers my grade all that much, which is funny because research has shown that, yes, it does. That the more you multitask, the more you switch between social media and studying or social media and homework, it lowers retention, it lowers performance. And so this was interesting, and I wish I could have asked follow-up questions or collected more data to see if their perceptions really matched what was going on in reality. However, they did notice that there was a negative impact on study quality. Like Drew said here at the bottom, if you read it being social media, and then go to Instagram, if you read it, like if you're reading an assignment, and then go to Instagram, you're not going to remember everything about that book. So if you're flipping back and forth, constantly shifting your attention, just like that video that we watched earlier said, there's going to be multiple things competing for your attention. Your short-term memory is going to become overwhelmed, and that information isn't going to be able to move into your long-term memory. All right, and then the benefits we've already talked about, a stress release and a mental break. So after 50 minutes, you're probably going to need a mental break, 50 minutes to an hour. And then also a stress release. If you're in the midst of a 4 or 5 hour cramming session, you're going to get stressed out, and people are going to need to use it as a stress reliever. And then this last little batch of finding relates to in-class themes of college students' use of social media. Again, nothing really else surprising here. Frequent use of social media during class, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to 20%, 25% of the time, to half to basically the entire class period. So there's kind of a range, but everybody was using social media for a pretty big chunk of time. All right, and then there were also some multiple factors that influence social media use during class. One would be boredom. If you're in a slow, passive lecture that's been going on for an hour or 2 hours, and time just feels like it's crawling by, probably feels natural at this point to whip out the cell phone for some entertainment and try to make things go by even quicker. And the second bullet point, or the second big bullet point, course structure. Boredom was usually a result of course structure. If classes were passive, if the material wasn't interesting, then it was going to lead to boredom, which would lead to social media use. Right. And then perceived academic impact of social media during class. Basically, students said it was awful. I'm texting constantly. I don't remember what the teacher said. I miss information. I do poorly on quizzes. I go to do my homework, and I can't remember what the teacher talked about in class. Right? So there's this huge negative impact that, like I said earlier, we're aware of, but still engage in social media anyways. And so another reason why I'm so interested in social media, this relates to Adam's question a couple minutes ago, that before cell phones and social media came out, there was only so much you could do during class to get off task. You could daydream, which plenty of people still do. But social media is this active temptation that pulls people off task. Even if you're trying to be self-regulated, if you're trying to be a good student, research has shown that even the most effective, highly self-regulated students still succumb to digital distraction and social media temptation, even when they're able to overcome other types of distractions. So that's another reason why I'm so interested in this, because it seems to represent a unique type of distraction, more so than what we've seen in the past. Right, and then these are some fun student final thoughts. Kaylee said the distractions are there. I just feel like we're being set up to fail. Like everything is being modernized and it's not good. I don't like it because it's failing me. And then Marissa said, I wish that I didn't have as much access to social media as I do, because it definitely impacts the way I live life, I guess. And then Rose said, if we went away from that and then back to a more traditional setting that it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago, I think that students in this day and age would, revert back to where they should be instead of where social media is leading them. And so, as I said earlier about the negative perceptions, these kind of final thoughts that they shared with us really highlighted those, that social media is changing the nature of society and academic experiences, and really they don't like it. All right. And so what have we learned about digital distraction from this study and others? First, we've really seen that digital distraction is an obstacle to student success, and the problem doesn't seem to be going away. The craziest thing is that it's really difficult to predict what technology is going to look like in the future. So we really have no idea where this is going. The trend suggests that digital distraction is going to get worse, or if not worse, at least just continue to be a problem. But what those sources of digital distraction look like, even what our cell phones are going to look like in 5 or 10 years, we really don't know. Also, college students are aware of the problem, but just being aware of it doesn't mean that we're able to overcome it successfully. And finally, we've learned that students and instructors both need to be proactive to combat against digital distraction, both in and out of the classroom. So with that, are there any questions, comments, concerns, anything else you would like to share? And I will switch back over to me.
How does he feel about like Facebook class groups? Because I know sometimes it's easier just to get on Facebook and ask a question and get an answer from someone in your classmate instead of emailing your question to a teacher and waiting possibly hours to get a response.
What are your thoughts on Facebook class groups where you would just go online to ask a fellow student the question rather than emailing or anything like that?
I'd say that would be perfect. And just like a class Twitter account, anything, there's all of these things can be leveraged as tools for learning. So if you've got that Facebook group and people are contributing or asking and answering questions, sharing information, I think all of those things are really awesome and should be used and probably will be used as tools for learning in the future. I'm just concerned about the off-task use of checking social media during class because you want to see pictures from the party that you were at this weekend, or scrolling through Twitter because you want to see what Paris Hilton's been up to this week. So, but yeah, if you can find ways to leverage these, what are now distractions, to your advantage, then that's definitely only going to increase your likelihood for success, because Facebook doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Twitter doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But if you can leverage them to your advantage, then definitely more power to you.
Hey, what would you say to the argument that trying to leverage those to your, your benefit or class benefit is only actually contributing to the problem, because now you're presenting it to yourself or to your students, rather than maybe saying no laptops, no cell phones out, and revert kind of more of the traditional structure of class?
That's an awesome question, and the honest answer is I really don't know. There's not a whole lot of research into this area about how to make Facebook a distraction, or how to make, Facebook, for example, a tool for learning. I would be hesitant probably to assume that it would work, because if you're trying to do a homework assignment outside of class, and then you pull up Facebook because you want to interact with your team or your group on that group page, you're right, it probably will just introduce you to that form of distraction, and then it might be more difficult to get back on task. But all of those things I'm saying, like mights, because I really don't know. The scientist in me would hope that there's an answer to this, and that Facebook or Twitter or whatever is going to be prominent in 5-10 years can be used as tools for success, and they can be. A Facebook group can be a really valuable source of information, but it's just like, how do we overcome the temptation to get off task? And those are things that we just don't really have concrete answers to. But like I said, the scientist in me believes that there's an answer there, and we can use these as tools for success. It's just a matter of figuring out the most effective way to do that.
Other questions? Do you have any questions for them, Abe?
I really don't. I just have a request that they all cheer for the Chicago Cubs here in a couple of hours.
Boo.
We need all the help we can get. And so whether it's watching the game through your cell phone or on your laptop or on a television, I just ask that you all cheer for the Cubs.
Who here is Cub fans?
Oh,
nobody. You're out of luck.
Honestly, that's a good life decision. It's only given me nothing but heartaches, so that's a good choice for all of you, really.
Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks, Abe, for your time. We appreciate it. It was a really enjoyable lecture.
All right, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you. We have one more next week, so watch your emails for that, and have a good day.